did right there.
All right, here we go. Well, we're back at the 37th Psalm. And, I had a dream last night. I have to confess, I was kind of, I don't know, maybe a little heavy. I was wondering to myself, what's the purpose of teaching this? And I know why we teach these things before Pentecost, and I know why we teach them during the counting of the Omar, but I had a heaviness, and then in the middle of the night, I don't know if it was a dream or what it was, but I woke up, and I had been working on a project that dealt with the first chapter of Genesis, and I was in a process of actually printing it out, and I saw something in the story of Cain and Abel that told me a little bit about why it's important to keep studying what we're studying. Because a lot of people say, well, I have a relationship with Elohim. Is all this really necessary? And this is what goes through my mind, is, are people thinking, is all this really necessary? So, in order to say yes, I went through all this extra stuff to try to put it all together. And we start our study of the 37th Psalm at Genesis chapter 4. Your notes say 3 through 8, but I didn't put 8 in there. It's just actually 3 through 7. And I'll read these verses. This is 3 through 5. Excuse me. It says, "And in process of time it came to pass that Cain brought of the fruit of the ground an offering unto Yehovah. And Abel, he also brought of the firstlings of his flock and of the fat thereof. And Yehovah had respect unto Abel and to his offering, but unto Cain and unto his offering he had not respect. And Cain was very wroth, and his countenance fell." So we see in this that both brothers are bringing something. However, we see that one brother is bringing the firstlings of his flock, and he's bringing the fat. The other brother, well, he's just bringing the fruit of the ground. And we ask ourselves, is there a difference? So if we consider Psalm 37:17 and compare it to Psalm 37:18, it's going to give us something that's kind of an eye-opener. Psalm 37:17 says, "For the arms of the wicked," or those who are wrong, "shall be broken, but Yahweh upholds the righteous." And verse 18 says, "Yahweh knows the days of them that are wholehearted, and their inheritance shall be forever." So we have to consider two words in these verses to kind of give us an understanding of what's going on in the Genesis story that will help us to understand that there's a difference in the way that we serve. There's a difference in the level of the relationship that we have. Righteous is the word sadakim. In Hebrew it means someone who's just, lawful, and correct. Doesn't sound all that bad. There is a relationship with Elohim, but it, as we're going to see, it lacks a component. In the verse 18 of this psalm, we see that the word wholehearted is used. Some Bibles define it as upright. The Hebrew word is tamayim, which means to be complete, whole, sound, and entirely in accord with truth and facts. So now there's a difference between righteous and wholehearted. That one of them is simply to be just. It is to be lawful, to be correct, according to what? But tamayim means to be wholehearted. It means to be complete, and to base that completeness on truth and fact. So there's a difference in those relationships. So what other differences do we see in these two examples? Tamayim also, by the way, means to be undefiled. We note that the righteous people are upheld by Yahuwah, and it really doesn't say a whole lot more than that. But as for the wholehearted people, well, we read that Yahweh knows their days and that their inheritance shall be forever. So what's the difference? Abram, who was obedient and believed, if this was counted to him as righteousness. But it wasn't until he began walking fully with Elohim that he became Abraham and received the inheritance. He was obedient. Elohim counted it to him as righteousness. But it wasn't until he really entered into the covenant and started walking fully with Elohim that he received the inheritance, or the promise of the inheritance. Cain brought his offering as was expected, but he didn't put anything else into its consideration. Abel took the time to find the firstlings of his flock, and then it says that also he brought the fat. So we have to understand that he checked the firstlings. He found the right sheep or goats or whatever it was, and then he took the time to dress them out, prepare the fat. So he had to delve inside of what he was doing in order to get the proper offering. So here's the difference between Cain's offering was that he just brought something. Everybody brings something. Okay? But when we bring something, do we bring the best that we have, and then do we dress it out, go inside, find the best of the fat, investigate so that we know the truth, and then offer that truth to our Elohim. And he did this to make absolutely sure that what he offered to Yehovah Elohim was right. In other words, undefiled, tamayim. So we have to understand that it's one thing to go to church and when time permits, read the Bible and pray. And people say, oh, so-and-so is so righteous before God. But if we consider the word tzadakim, we're going to see something in the word tzadakim that if we write it out, let's see, which one am I writing? Tzadakim? Tzadakim. We notice something, that we have righteousness, but that righteousness is a righteousness that is rooted in the poverty that's concerning the truth, power, and the ability of Yehovah Elohim, that keeps one, and here it is right here, in the Kof. The Kof represents the word Kodesh. And everybody says, oh, well, Kodesh means holy. But literally, Kodesh in Hebrew means something that's set apart, something that's separated. It really doesn't have anything to do with holiness or sanctification. It means something that is set apart. Because in Torah, it talks about idolaters who are Kodeshim, set apart because of their idolatry and their harlotry and stuff. So if we see that these idolaters are Kodeshim, are we going to say that they are holy? Kodesh means to be set apart. And it's the same thing here, that in the righteous, there is still a poverty in their ability to connect fully with the truth, power, and the ability of Yehovah, that they are separated from the truth, power, and the ability because they do not fully come to Mashiach. They do not fully have the anointing of Yehovah inside of them. They do not have the fullness of the Spirit. This is something that's lacking. When we say, how is this possible? Zadik means a righteous one. The Zohar tells us it is because of the righteous that Elohim does not destroy the word. How is it that the Zadikim are not where they need to be? and we consider the words of Yeshua at Matthew 22 through 27, and Yeshua says, "Not everyone who says to me, 'Master, Master,' shall inherit the reign of the heavens." Now, most of your Bibles probably say the kingdom of the heavens, or the kingdom of heaven. The word is actually reign of the heavens, because this is an action word. To reign takes action. The kingdom of heaven is simply a noun. It's describing a place. But the reign of the heavens is that not everyone who says to me, "Master, Master," shall have the power that comes from heaven into their life. Who's going to have it? But he who is doing the desire of my Father in the heavens. Now we said that the word for Father is Ab. So we say that if it's Av, what do we have? It's Father. But it's also, in the Hebrew, we recognize that it is us being in the very house. There's the bait of Seh Elohim. That if we are in his house, if we are acknowledging his house, who is the house of Seh Elohim? John says, "The Word became flesh and tabernacled among us." The beit is also a word that means tabernacle, house. Okay? So the Word and the salvation of Yahweh Elohim is the thing that we must be conscious of performing, doing what it tells us to do. Exactly the way it tells us to do. We have to dig down and dig out the fat in order to give the right offering. He goes on to say, "Many shall say to me in that day, 'Master, Master, have we not prophesied in your name, and cast out demons in your name, and done mighty works in your name?' And then I shall declare to them, 'I never knew you. Depart from me, you who work lawlessness.'" You who work lawlessness means, lawlessness in this case means to not fully understand the Torah, to not fully understand Tanakh. They did not have the New Testament pocket version that you could carry around. They had Torah, they had the prophets, and they had the writings. This is what they had. And if you did not understand it, if you did not follow it, then you were working unrighteousness. But it says, "In your name, in your name, in your name." Okay? What name are we talking about? We go down to verse 28, and it kind of gives us an idea. "And it came to be when Yehoshua had ended these words that the people were astonished at his teaching. For he's teaching as one possessing authority, and not as the scribes." Yehoshua, the word and the salvation of Elohim, taught with authority. That authority was given to him by the Father, whose name is Yehovah. Okay? But if we do not acknowledge the Father, like it says, it says, "But he who is doing the desire of my Father in the heavens," if we do not acknowledge the Father and do that desire, then we don't know who he is. We can do all kinds of righteous acts, and we see all kinds of wonderful things that take place, and there's a lot of upright, wonderful people that have a true righteous relationship with God, but they're lacking the component that makes it a wholehearted relationship. Everybody with me so far? Mm-hmm. Okay. So we consider the word tamayim and get a better idea of what we need to aim for. Very simply, we see that we must be in a covenant relationship. There's the tav, in which we live in the truth, power, and the ability of Yehovah through the truth in the Word and yielding to Mashiach. And there's the closed mem again. But we have to have an open ear. We have to base our relationship in spirit and in truth, which requires that we strive for the truth in the Word in order to provide an undefiled offering to Elohim. And in order to do this, we have to pay attention to what Elohim is saying to Cain. Yahuwah said unto Cain, why are you wroth, and why is your countenance fallen? If you do well, will you not be lifted up? Or will it not be lifted up? He's talking about the countenance. And if you don't do well, sin crouches at the door, and unto you is its desire, but you can be its master, or you can rule over it. Last week we talked about lifted up. We say, I lift you up, my Elohim. And we talked about the word nasa, which means that in our lifting him up, he holds on to us, and he lifts us up, and he carries us, and he takes care of us. That in lifting him up, we exalt him, and we honor him. And that in the very letters of the word nasa, we see the middle letter is the samek, which means surround. Its gematria is 120, which represents our life. So that in our life, something is happening. The first letter being the nun, which represents life, it represents reward. And the last letter being the He, which represents the very spirit of Elohim. What are we doing when we are lifted up? If our countenance is fallen, it can be lifted up. It means that the Spirit can surround it and take care of it. But if we don't let the Spirit surround it and take care of it, then something happens. And that something that happens is that sin crouches at the door. But looking at these two verses, we see that they are absolutely true and correct words for us to consider. Cain is asked, why are you wroth? The word here is chara, which doesn't just mean wroth, it means angry, but it also means dry. If we understand that the word of Elohim to be the living water, then we understand that without it, we will dry up, and our emotions will overcome our relationship with Elohim. And this is why we get the next little question that Elohim asks him is, why has your countenance fallen? We consider the righteous Abraham. He let fear overcome his relationship with Elohim. And what did he do? He lied. He said, Sarah is my sister. And what happened? Well, he did this twice. Pharaoh and his kingdom suffered, and Abimelech and his kingdom suffered. And this is what happens when we are not in tune with the truth in the Word, that we can cause others to suffer because of our being out of tune. We see a lot of, and this may be meddling or picking, but we have a lot of people out there teaching and preaching things that go contrary to the Word. And these are upstanding people, they are righteous people, but they lack the component to truly understand, or they don't take the initiative to understand. They simply go on, this is what I've been taught, this is what I learned in the seminary, it's the truth, and this is what I'm going to teach. And I'm going to close my mind off to anything else you might teach me, because anything that you teach me can't compare to what I learned from my teachers. That's closed-mindedness. And the truth will slap you in the face, but you won't see it. So, with that in mind, when we are not in tune with the truth in the Word, we cause people to suffer. But we see that as sin crouches at the door, and its desire is for you. When we don't bother to check things out, then the truth of the matter is sin sits at the door. And sin is an interesting word in chata. Chata doesn't just mean sin. It means a choice, the punishment for sin, but it also means the purification. So we can have punishment or we can have redemption, but the choice is ours. But it all depends on are being able to perceive the truth of the word of Elohim.